My name is Jessie. For 7 years, I lived in what I thought was a marriage built on love. My husband Adam and I got married young. We were excited, hopeful, and like every young couple, we dreamed of building a family. We dreamed of little feet running through the house, of birthday parties, of lullabies in the middle of the night. But years passed, and no baby came. At first, Adam was supportive. We both went to doctors. I did every test they asked. Blood work, hormones, scans, procedures that left me emotionally and physically exhausted. I cried in silence most nights. I blamed myself. Maybe my body was broken. Maybe I was less of a woman because I couldn't give him a child. The doctors told us to be patient. That stress could make things worse. That sometimes it just took time. But time didn't bring us closer. It pulled us apart. Adam became distant, then frustrated, then angry. He stopped coming home early. He stopped touching me. He stopped talking about children. His disappointment grew like a shadow in our home. One night, he looked at me like I was a stranger and said that maybe this wasn't what he wanted anymore, that maybe he had made a mistake. My heart shattered that night. Then the physical abuse started. It wasn't all at once. It began with angry shouts, then slamming doors, then things thrown at the wall, then the back of his hand. I told no one, not my family, not my friends. I wore makeup over bruises and fake smiles over my pain. I still believed he was just hurting, that maybe he just needed time. I thought I could fix this, that if I loved him harder, deeper, stronger, he would come back to me. But love doesn't cure cruelty. One evening, after another pointless dinner in silence, he dropped his fork and told me it was over, that he had found someone else, someone younger, someone who wanted children, someone who could give him what I couldn't. Her name was Cindy. He packed his things within a week. I watched him carry out the life we had built in cardboard boxes. No goodbye kiss, no tears, just a slammed door. I stood there in our empty hallway trembling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to die, but I didn't. I sat on the floor and cried until my throat was raw. Then I got up, and I began the hardest part of my life, living without the man I gave everything to, a man who turned his back on me, because he believed I was the problem. But I wasn't, and one day I would find out the truth. The days after Adam left were hollow. The silence in the house screamed louder than any fight we ever had. I moved through the rooms like a ghost. Every photo frame on the wall felt like a lie. Every memory became poison. I wanted to forget, but forgetting doesn't come easy when the scars are still fresh. I quit social media. I ignored calls from friends. I didn't want pity. I didn't want questions. I didn't want to explain why the man who once held my hand in front of the world had now chosen another woman. I spent most days curled up in bed. Some days I didn't eat. Others, I forced myself to walk outside just to feel the sun. The world kept moving while mine had stopped. Cindy was everywhere. Her pictures with Adam flooded my newsfeed through mutual friends, smiling, happy, traveling, holding hands, like they had never broken someone in the process. People whispered. Some said I wasn't woman enough. Others hinted that maybe it was good Adam found someone else. They didn't know the bruises I hid. They didn't know the nights I bled silently in the bathroom. They didn't know the times I screamed into pillows, just to keep the neighbors from hearing. But I survived, not because I was strong, but because pain eventually hardens you. You learn to breathe differently, to expect less, to carry your own weight. I started therapy. I joined a support group. I met other women like me, broken, left, lied to, abused. And slowly, I realized I wasn't alone, that I wasn't the problem. That love isn't meant to destroy. It's meant to heal. And Adam was not love. He was control. He was fear. 6 months passed. I found a job that I loved. I found peace in a small apartment, far from the neighborhood we used to live in. I bought new sheets. I changed my number, I even adopted a cat named Luna, who curled beside me every night like a promise that not all love ends in pain. And then one day I got a message. A mutual friend asked if I had heard. I didn't know what she meant, but what she said next made my heart still for a moment. Cindy had left Adam. Just like that. Gone. And rumors said it was because they couldn't have children. Just like us. Something inside me shifted. I didn't celebrate. Not at first. I didn't smile or laugh. I sat quietly and stared at the wall. The pieces began falling into place like a cruel puzzle. Cindy left him, just like he left me, and for the same reason. But there was one difference. I never gave up on Adam. I was loyal until the end. Cindy had no history with him, no scars. She saw a flaw and walked away. The same flaw Adam thought belonged to me. That night, I went through my old medical records. Everything I ever did to prove I wasn't the reason we couldn't conceive. And it was all there, clear, documented. I was fertile, perfectly capable of having children. But Adam never followed through on his tests. He never wanted to believe the issue might be his. And now I knew why. Because the truth was never about children. It was about control. And now, control had slipped from his hands. And life had given him what he gave me, loss. Adam's life was unraveling, slowly, quietly, just the way karma works, when it wants you to feel every second of your own undoing. I didn't look for updates, but they found me anyway. People who once sided with him now spoke in whispers. Friends who had turned their backs on me now carried rumors back like apologies. Wrapped in gossip, Cindy was gone. She had taken her things in the middle of the night, left a note, and never came back. She had met someone else, someone younger, someone she claimed had dreams she wanted to be part of. And just like that, Adam was alone. The woman he threw everything away for vanished as quickly as she came. No vows, no effort, no forgiveness. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when Adam went to see a specialist, alone, desperate to understand why every attempt to start a family had failed again. He sat in the waiting room with a tight jaw and shaking hands. The nurse called his name. The tests were done. The results came back. And the truth hit him like a storm. He was infertile. He had always been infertile. A condition present for years. Undetected. Only because he never finished the full evaluations when we were still together. He had refused them. Dismissed them. Assumed the problem was me. Because that was easier. Because blaming me kept his pride intact. But now there was no one else to blame. When I found out, I felt nothing at first. I waited for anger, for satisfaction, for a sense of justice. But there was only silence. The kind of silence that comes after surviving a war. You don't jump in victory, you exhale. He had lied to himself for so long. Built a life on assumptions. Left a loyal wife for a fantasy that crumbled faster than it started. And now he stood exactly where he had left me. Empty, alone, unwanted. I never reached out. I didn't text. I didn't gloat. I didn't remind him of the years he stole from me. I simply went on with my life. I had learned the hardest lesson of all. That closure isn't something you get from others. It's something you give yourself. So I gave it. I started waking up without pain. I decorated my apartment with light colors. I joined yoga classes. I started writing again. Things I used to love before marriage drained me. I laughed with friends. Real laughter, not the kind that hides wounds. I traveled to places I once dreamed about. I stood on cliffs and watched oceans move below me and felt no fear. I finally understood freedom, not the kind Adam promised me. The kind I gave myself. And then it happened. One quiet evening, a knock at the door. Loud, hesitant, familiar. I knew before I even looked. It was Adam, standing in front of my door, looking broken. And he had no idea that this time, he was knocking on a door that no longer opened for him. I stood still for a few seconds, my breath caught in my chest. My heart didn't race. It didn't break. It simply beat in silence. Stronger than before, I opened the door slowly, and there he was, Adam, the man who once swore to love me, the man who made me feel worthless, now standing with eyes sunken, lips trembling, and shoulders slouched, like he had been carrying shame for miles. He looked older, tired, worn down in ways life never touched him when we were together. He wore regret like a second skin. His gaze searched my face for warmth, for familiarity, for a welcome he no longer deserved. I said nothing. He tried to speak. His voice cracked. He mumbled my name. It hung in the air like smoke. But I didn't move. I waited, not because I needed his explanation, but because I wanted to see how far he had fallen from the pedestal he built for himself. He said he had made mistakes, that he didn't know what he was doing, that he was lost and confused. He said leaving me was the worst decision of his life. He said Cindy had betrayed him, that she never loved him the way I did, that she laughed in his face when the doctor gave him the truth, that she called him broken and walked out with another man the very next week. He said he had nowhere else to go. I stood there in my doorway listening, not because I cared, but because every word he spoke made something inside me stand taller. Not proud, not spiteful, just certain. Certain that I had survived something that tried to erase me. Certain that I had built a life without him. And that life was enough. He asked if we could talk, said he missed me, said he wanted to make things right, that we could try again, that we could adopt, that we could travel, that he had changed. But the man in front of me was a stranger, and I was no longer the woman he had left behind. I told him I wished him peace, that I hoped he found healing, but there was no space for him in my life anymore, not as a friend, not as a memory, and certainly not as a husband. He stood there frozen, like he never expected the woman he discarded would one day be the one with the power to say no. But that was exactly what I said. No. He lowered his eyes, nodded slowly, then turned and walked away. I closed the door behind him, this time not with sadness, but with finality, with strength. And when the silence returned, it didn't scream. It whispered, "You're free." After the door closed behind Adam, I stood there for a long time. My hand rested on the doorknob. The silence was full, but peaceful. My past had just walked away, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to chase it. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I didn't question if I did the right thing. I simply breathed, and every breath reminded me that healing is not a destination. It's a decision you make every single day. I went to the kitchen and made tea. The smell of chamomile filled the room. Luna, my cat, jumped into my lap like she always did. The quiet was no longer a wound. It was a friend, a reminder that peace doesn't scream for attention. It simply exists. In the following days, I thought about Adam less and less. The memory of him became distant, like a bad dream that loses detail as the morning light rises. My life felt lighter, uncluttered, free of emotional noise. I began focusing on myself again, not just surviving, thriving. I started a journal. I wrote about my fears, my growth, and my hopes. Each page became a piece of the old me that I reclaimed. I found joy in simple things: sunlight through the window, the scent of new books, the warmth of my favorite blanket. I reconnected with people I had pushed away, friends who had worried about me but respected my space. They welcomed me back with open arms and no questions. I began saying yes more, to invitations, to adventures, to myself. I joined a creative writing workshop. At first, I was scared to share. But when I read a piece about reclaiming your voice after years of silence, the room fell still. Then came the applause. And in that moment, I felt seen, not as someone's ex-wife, not as a victim, but as Jessie, just Jessie, a woman who walked through fire and didn't let the flames define her. One afternoon, I sat in a coffee shop by the window. A little girl at the next table dropped her cookie. She looked like she might cry. Her mother gently wiped her hands and gave her another one from her purse. The girl laughed and hugged her tightly. It was so simple, so pure. I smiled and felt a wave of warmth. I used to think being a mother was the only way I could feel whole, that my worth depended on giving someone else life. But now I understood something deeper. You don't need a child to create love. You can build it in your friendships, in your passions, in yourself. Adam believed children were the only legacy, but I was building mine through strength, through resilience, through quiet victories no one else saw. I stopped looking back, not because the past didn't matter, but because it had taught me everything I needed. Now the road ahead was mine alone. No more waiting, no more begging, no more empty arms or unanswered questions. Just a future I was ready to meet. With time, healing became more than just survival. It became purpose. I started noticing the women around me, not just on the surface, but truly noticing them. The quiet ones, the ones who looked away when someone asked about their families, the ones who smiled too much or not at all. I saw the pain in their silence. I recognized it because I had lived it. So I decided to do something with everything I had endured. I created a small group. At first, it was just 3 women. We met once a week at the community center. We brought tea and cookies. No formalities. Just a safe space where pain wasn't something to be ashamed of. We didn't talk about healing like it was a goal. We talked about it like it was a process. And in that room, something beautiful began to grow. Word spread. More women came. Some were still in abusive marriages. Some had just walked away. Some were trying to rebuild after years of being told they were not enough. And every single one of them brought a story. Different details, but the same echo, that they had given everything to someone who gave them nothing in return. I didn't try to be a leader. I just listened, and in return, they listened to me. We cried, we laughed, we shared journal entries and half-written poems.
Some brought art. Others brought letters they never sent.
We began calling the group The Quiet. Rise, because every woman there was learning to rise quietly, without violence, without vengeance, with dignity. Eventually we hosted our first public event, a small gathering, a night of spoken word and storytelling. I read a piece I had written about the day Adam knocked on my door, how I didn't open it to pain, but I opened it to closure. The room was silent. Then it erupted in applause, not just for me, but for every woman who had done the same, for every woman who had chosen herself. The event led to another, then another. Before long, the Quiet Rise became more than a support group. It became a movement. We raised funds for shelters. We helped women find legal support. We partnered with therapists in clinics. We created an entire network, built on the idea that no woman should ever have to heal alone. One afternoon after a session, an older woman pulled me aside. Her eyes were glassy. Her hands trembled. She said that my story saved her, that after 30 years of silence, she had finally told someone about the bruises, that for the first time in her life, she felt seen. And in that moment, I realized something. Adam had taken years from me, but he had also, unknowingly, lit a fire I never knew existed. A fire that warmed others, that gave light to those still trapped in darkness. Life has a quiet way of surprising you when you least expect it, not with fireworks, not with grand gestures, but with little moments that feel like gentle reminders that you're on the right path. That's how it happened to me. I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't waiting for it either. I had finally reached a place where I was enough on my own, complete, balanced, free. It was at a bookstore. I was browsing a shelf filled with travel memoirs, when a man beside me dropped a copy of a book I loved. I picked it up for him. He smiled. It was not a dazzling smile meant to impress. It was kind, soft, present. He asked if I had read it. I said yes, twice, and we started talking. His name was Daniel. We didn't exchange numbers that day. just names and a shared appreciation for words. But fate is persistent. The next week, I saw him again at a local coffee shop. This time we sat together, talked for hours about everything and nothing. It felt easy, no pressure, no expectations, just two people sharing a space in time. Weeks passed. We continued to meet. Walks in the park, long conversations under string lights, laughter over silly things. He never asked about my past. Not at first. He never pushed. He never probed. He simply listened when I chose to speak. And when I finally told him my story, he didn't flinch. He didn't pity me. He respected me. He told me that strength like mine was rare, that healing like mine was powerful, that I didn't need to prove anything to anyone ever again. But he also made it clear that I didn't have to do life alone unless I wanted to. It scared me at first, letting someone in again, even someone as gentle as him. I had spent so long protecting myself that I had built walls taller than I realized. But he never tried to tear them down. He waited. Brick by brick, I opened the door, not because I needed saving, but because I was finally safe enough to let someone walk beside me. He came to one of our Quiet Rise events, sat in the back, watched with awe as the women shared their truth. Afterward, he told me he had never seen anything more beautiful than women rising from ashes, without burning the world around them. That night, he didn't try to kiss me. He just held my hand. The moment I walked away from Adam on that bench, something shifted inside me. It wasn't just peace. It was power. The kind of power that comes from surviving everything meant to break you. And not just surviving it, but rising above it. I had done more than let go. I had grown roots in my own freedom. The next few weeks were filled with clarity. I knew it was time to do more. Not just quietly support women in the safety of small rooms, but speak louder, stand taller. Let the world hear the stories too often buried under shame and silence. So I began writing everything. Every moment, every bruise, every breath I had held in for years. I wrote about the love I gave, the pain I endured, the lies I believed, the strength I found, and most importantly, I wrote about truth. My truth. The Quiet Rise grew faster than I imagined. We were no longer just a group. We became a movement. Women from different cities began reaching out, asking for resources, for support, for someone to just listen. One evening, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership summit. It was a national platform. Cameras, journalists, rows of women from all walks of life. I stood behind the microphone. My hands were steady, my voice calm. I told them everything, not to gain sympathy, but to give someone else the courage to speak. I shared the darkest nights and the brightest mornings. I told them about the day I said no to the man who broke me, and the day I said yes to the woman I was always meant to become. The applause was thunderous, but it wasn't the noise that moved me. It was the tears in their eyes, the way they stood afterward to hug me, thank me, share their stories, as if they had been waiting for permission to breathe freely. A week later, my story was published in a major online magazine. The article went viral. Messages poured in, from strangers, from old classmates, from women I had never met, but who saw themselves in every word I wrote. I was invited to speak on panels, to write a book, to teach workshops, and with every opportunity, I said yes, not because I needed the attention, but because there are too many women walking through life thinking they are the problem, when all along, they have been carrying someone else's guilt. One afternoon, after a conference, a young woman approached me, barely 20, eyes full of fear and hope. She said she had been planning to leave her abusive partner, but didn't have the strength. Then she heard me speak, and she packed her bags that very night. It had been almost a year since Adam last stood at my door. Since I told him no, since I chose myself, I never expected to see him again. And honestly, I never hoped to. But life doesn't always ask for permission before bringing the past back into view. I was walking out of a grocery store one morning, a bag of apples in one hand, a bouquet of fresh flowers in the other. And there he was, standing by his car, alone, just like before. Our eyes met for a brief moment. He looked surprised, maybe a little embarrassed. His posture shifted like he wasn't sure whether to approach or retreat. But I didn't turn away. I didn't run. I walked past him slowly, calmly, because there was no fear left in me. He called my name, softly, not demanding, just hopeful. I stopped and looked at him. He was thinner than I remembered. His face was tired, his clothes wrinkled. He looked like a man still searching for something he had long ago destroyed. He said he wasn't there to beg, that he just wanted to talk. Just for a moment, I agreed, not out of curiosity, but out of peace. I had nothing left to lose, and nothing left to protect. We sat on a nearby bench. The breeze was warm. The streets were quiet. He spoke first. He told me about the past year, about the loneliness, the therapy, the long nights of wondering where everything went wrong, about how he tried to date again, but no one stayed, that something in him always felt missing. He said he finally understood what I had gone through, that he had replayed everything in his head, the words he said, the way he blamed me, the way he left, the way he used his pain as an excuse to hurt me. He said he was sorry, and for the first time I believed him. Not because he cried, not because he looked broken, but because I didn't need his apology anymore. I had already healed without it. His remorse didn't change my life. It just confirmed what I had always known, that I was never the problem. I thanked him, not for what he did, but for the closure I had already given myself. I told him I wished him peace, that I hoped he found something in life that helped him grow. But I also told him that my heart was no longer a place he could return to. Years had passed since the day Adam walked out of my life. Time didn't erase everything, but it softened the edges. The wounds became scars, and the scars became stories. Stories I now told without pain in my voice. Only truth, only strength. I no longer lived in that apartment where I found myself again. I had moved into a home near the hills, surrounded by trees and bird song. Peaceful, private, mine. The walls held books and art and laughter. They held no echoes of shouting, no cold silences, only warmth. My mornings began with tea and journaling. My afternoons were spent mentoring women, writing, walking. Luna through shaded trails. Some days I traveled to speak. Other days I stayed home and baked cinnamon bread that filled the kitchen with memory and comfort. Daniel was still part of my life, but we had no wedding rings, no rushed commitments, just love, gentle, steady, present. The kind of love that didn't ask for anything but truth. He never tried to fill my past. He only walked with me toward the future. And yet, I didn't need him to feel complete, because I had become whole all on my own. I never had children, not the way I once dreamed, but I became a mother in other ways. To the movement I birthed, to the women I nurtured, to the lives I helped rebuild, to the hope I planted where pain once grew wild. Every now and then, I would hear about Adam. He had moved away, tried to start over, struggled with the relationships, still searching, still restless. And though I held no hatred in my heart, I felt nothing more than distance when his name was mentioned. He was part of a chapter that had ended long ago. A lesson, not a loss. One evening, I stood on my back porch, watching the sun dip below the hills. The sky burned orange and gold. The air was quiet, still, and I smiled to myself. I remembered the girl I once was, the one who begged to be loved, who stayed in rooms where her spirit was shrinking, who thought worth came from someone else's approval. I sent her a silent thank you for surviving,
For holding on.
for never letting go of hope, even in the darkest nights.